The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream. Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
There's nothing wrong with taking information from Russians.
There's nothing wrong with taking
Depends
information.
on where it came from. It
Came
depends
from
on where it
Russia.
came from. You're assuming that the giving of information is a campaign contribution. You read the report carefully. The report says we can't conclude that because the law is pretty much against that.
What?
Do you people get information from this person, that person?
So
this person?
you would have accepted information from Russians against a client, against a candidate if you were running in the presidential election?
I probably wouldn't. I wasn't asked. I would have advised just out of excess of caution, don't do it.
You're a genius.
Oh, that is just wow. I have to say, this is an amazing thing. So we've now gone through the Mueller report. I am so full, though. I may burp all the way through the show. I don't know. I don't eat, or all I do is drink coffee before the show. But oh my God, are you guys sitting up? Are you okay? I mean, I'm barely able to sit up. Karen outdid herself. That was the most unbelievable Passover Seder I ever had in my life. I hope that you enjoyed your blessed Easters, everybody. So, the food seems to be the one thing that we would share in common. Oh, my God, there's so much of it. The matzah crack was a big hit. It was huge. Huge. And I neglected to tell you in the Randi Rhodes After Hours podcast, one of the main ingredients in the crack. And that is you have to put nuts. You have to put nuts. Any nuts that you choose, but you have to crush them and put them on top, and then the sea salt. So that was bothering me. Can you believe that? That I gave you a recipe that is unbelievable, but that it bothered me. I left off the nuts. Well, nuts is, basically the topic here because this president and Rudy Giuliani and everybody around him are nuts. They are insane people. Rudy Giuliani sat on the Sunday shows and he tried to tell the American people, just remember, this is the evolution of the story. First, Trump is saying it didn't happen. He never talked to Russians. The Russian government didn't offer anything. And that they never had anything to do with the Russian government. They never took meetings. They never contacted Russians. Russians never contacted them. And now that the Mueller report is out, they have shifted from it didn't happen into there's nothing wrong with it. Oh, God. So Rudy Giuliani literally sat on the TV yesterday saying that working in tandem with a hostile foreign power to get their guy elected is perfectly fine. And that tells you that that's exactly what Donald Trump did. And that's what the evidence tells us too. So this is just an amazing thing that America's mayor and our chief hero during the 9/11 is now nothing more than a shill for Donald Trump. And he would like for you to accept the notion that our elections should be, and have been opportunities for other countries to install leaders of their choosing. Let that sink in for a brief moment. Just roll that over in your head, that America is no longer American. America belongs to not just the lizard people like the Sheldon Adelsons of the world. Oh, no. Not just the giant donors like the Koch brothers. No. America now belongs to any hostile foreign power with a really good intelligence apparatus. And that they will be picking for you the person they believe is best for us. That is a sick proposition, and I cannot accept it. I am so sorry. It's not even about money anymore, because one of the reasons why, the reason why Mueller never charged Donald Trump or Donald Trump Jr. With cooperating with the Russians is because he was, first of all, Donald Trump Jr., this Mueller report is really, it's a doozy. It's hair-raising when you read it. It's absolutely hair-raising, I have to say. It makes me weep. It really does. Because it seems to me Mueller wasn't done. Just want to get that on the record. It seems to me like Mueller had some time constraint that nobody knows about. Seems to me that this is the reason why he didn't pursue interviewing the president. Also, he wasn't able to interview Donald Trump Jr. Did you know that? Yeah. Donald Trump Jr. was not subpoenaed to be interviewed. And the big question I had going into the reading of this 448 pages, 36 of them totally redacted. So, it was less than 448. But okay, is because something after the reason why Mueller didn't subpoena Jr. is redacted. And I got a feeling it's because Jr. told Mueller he would invoke his Fifth Amendment privilege not to self-incriminate. But we don't know because it's redacted. And so what Mueller concluded on the Trump Tower meeting was insufficient evidence, not no evidence, as they are trying to spin it on the Republican side. Oh, on the Republican, who cares if he's a Manchurian candidate? Anybody would have worked with the Manchurians. I mean, what kind of sick thing is this? Some days you are going to look fondly back on the good old days when money actually, elected Congress members and senators and presidents. You're just going to lovingly look back and you're going to remember, oh, yeah, those were the good old days when money chose our presidents and money picked our Congress. Now foreign governments do. Why even begin in Iowa? Why even begin in New Hampshire? Just let's go to, Moscow. Let's hold the caucuses in Riyadh. I hear Tel Aviv is lovely this time of year. And what about Beijing, everybody? What about Beijing? Our presidents are not elected anymore. They are installed. They are installed. Trump was placed in the Oval Office by Vladimir Putin, and he is the first internationally installed president in U.S. history, and our job is to make sure he's the last. Or else everything I just told you will be looked back as, oh, remember when? Remember when? We are at a momentous moment in the history of the United States of America, and you have politics getting in the way of the law. You have we have to leave politics behind and do something to make sure that this never, ever can happen ever again. Because remember that Putin told Jr. that this was the Russian government's support for his father's election. And that's what that meeting in Trump Tower was about. And Jr. would not testify. Jr. wasn't subpoenaed because typically if you're going to invoke your Fifth Amendment privilege and you tell that to a prosecutor, they won't subpoena you. And so that's what happened there. And so we didn't get his testimony. And so, here we are stuck having to investigate ourselves and bring Trump Jr. in front of Congress to take his fifth so everybody can see that he's going to invoke the fifth. And the same with the president of the United States, who was never, ever interviewed. He wasn't interviewed, and some camps think that Donald Trump wasn't subpoenaed, A, because Mueller had some sort of a time constraint. He had a deadline that we're not aware of, that perhaps Bill Barr told him, you're done on this day, and that's it. And then if you're not, we're done, we're going to rescind, we're going to close down the office. Bill Barr. That's the first reason, I think, that the president wasn't subpoenaed, because when Mueller writes in this report about why he wasn't subpoenaed, he said, we made the decision in view of the substantial delay that such an investigative step would likely produce at a late stage in our investigation. Late stage? Why was it a late stage? Because there had to have been a deadline that was given to him. He also believed that he had proved obstruction, because he said, we also assessed that based on the significant body of evidence we had already obtained of the president's actions and his public and private statements describing or explaining those actions, we had sufficient evidence. So he believes the president obstructed justice. And that could be another reason. But the thing that really freaks me out is that they were all going to invoke their Fifth Amendment. And that's what Mueller says. And he says that about the conspiracy, about how he couldn't get to proof beyond a reasonable doubt. People lied, and people destroyed, and people used encrypted apps.
Clear for takeoff.
The Randi Rhodes His Air Force. Air Force. RandiRhodes.com. All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Would you denounce what happened in 2016, and would you warn him to never do it again?
So let me just say that we have two thoughts. You have groups that are wondering why the FBI never took the server. Haven't they taken the server?
Hillary's server.
Why was the FBI told to leave the office of the Democratic National Committee? I've been wondering that. I've been asking that for months and months, and I've been tweeting it out and calling it out on social media. Where is the server? I want to know, where is the server, and what is the server saying? They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be. I have confidence in both parties. What happened to the servers of the Pakistani gentlemen that worked on the DNC? Where are those servers? They're missing. Where are they? What happened to Hillary Clinton's emails? I think in Russia they wouldn't be gone so easily. I think it's a disgrace that we can't get Hillary Clinton's 33,000 emails. So I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today. And what he did is an incredible offer. He offered to have the people working on the case come and work with their investigators with respect to the 12 people.
I believe that Russia is a democratic state, and I hope you're not denying this right to your own country. You're not denying that United States is a democracy. Then the final conclusion in this kind of a dispute can only be delivered by a trial.
Does the Russian government have any compromising material on President Trump or his family?
When President Trump visited Moscow back then, I didn't even know that he was in Moscow. Well, please just disregard these issues and don't think about this anymore again.
Okay, and that's a lie, because obviously Putin sent Donald Trump a gift when he was in Russia for the Miss Universe pageant in 2013. So that, I mean, these two men are extraordinarily authoritarian dictators, and they don't believe in the rule of law, and they lie. That is just a fact. So here you have the Giuliani-Trump model, where our presidents are no longer elected. They are installed by a foreign government with a super good, efficient intelligence network deployed against the United States. Holy crap, let that sink in. And so we are at this monumentous, decision here. We are to impeach or not to impeach. That is the question. That is the question, everybody, whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous Donald Trump or to draw up articles of impeachment. I mean, Hamlet dithered so long that everybody died. That's where that comes from. So, honestly, I don't know what to tell you. I will say Nancy Pelosi put out a statement this morning. They're having a conference call in about 25 minutes, the Democrats are, to discuss the way forward, to figure out what to do. She wrote, Dear Democratic colleague, as you know, last Thursday's release of the redacted Mueller report has caused a public outcry for truth and accountability. Damn right. Since its release, our committees of jurisdiction and their staffs have spent the holiday weekend reviewing its contents. Our country is well served by the exceptional leadership of our chairs to seek the truth for the American people. So far, so good. While we do not have the full report and the underlying exhibits, including the grand jury testimony, which has to be off the hook, man. I mean, Don McGahn alone, that's got to be like, woo! Because you know what Don McGahn was saying? You know what everybody in the Trump administration at the time was saying? The John Kellys of the world, the McGahns of the world. They were saying that whatever the commander-in-chief would order them to do, they would then leave the room and discuss whether or not to follow our commander-in-chief's orders. Now, if you were in the military, oh my God, you'd be in the brig. you would be either booted out or you would be put on trial and jailed for defying an order, unless the order was illegal. And so they must have thought that the president's orders were so illegal that they could not and should not follow them. That is the only deduction. That is the only conclusion that would save them from, being hung as traitors. Literally. Oh, wow. So that fact alone. All right. And then she says, as to Mueller's conclusion regarding Russian interference in our elections, the House Democrats have led the way to strengthen our democracy with the early passage of H.R. 1. Now, she is right about that. H.R. 1 is the For the People Act, and it addresses all of the election protection that you would want. It has ethics reform in it. It's got voting rights protection in it. It's got all kinds of, money obligate, you have to disclose and you can't give more than this. And it's really to clean up all of this that transpired. Now, the House has passed it. But Mitch McConnell, who has all the power, making the president's power look almost stupid, will not introduce it in the Senate for a vote ahead of our elections, knowing what he knows, knowing that Mueller laid out in 100 pages the interference that did happen and the willingness and the joy with which Donald Trump accepted that help. That's crazy. That's crazy, and that indicates that the law needs to be strengthened so that it's not a close call. And that's what H.R. 1 was all about. She said, we continue to urge our Senate colleagues to take up these reforms. I want you to remember that your vote is not protected in this country any longer, and that Mitch McConnell and the GOP Senate is the impediment to clean and fair elections. Just remember that. She says, in the light of the president's defenders arguing in defense of receiving and weaponizing stolen emails, we continue to press our Republican House counterparts to take up our pledge and refuse to use stolen, hacked, or falsified information in campaigns because the American people deserve an honest debate. Can you believe we're here? Can you believe that the Republican House and the Republican Senate will not agree not to use foreign intelligence operations in elections? What kind of new swill is this? This is a fresh hell that we're facing. While our views range, and here's the hitch in the get-along, while our views range from proceeding to investigate the findings of the Mueller report or proceeding directly to impeachment, we all firmly agree that we should proceed down a path of finding the truth. It is also important to know that the facts regarding holding the president accountable can be gained outside of impeachment hearings. As we proceed to uncover the truth and present additional needed reforms to protect our democracy, we must show the American people we are proceeding free from passion or prejudice, strictly on presentation of fact. Because we have still not seen the full Mueller report, I have enclosed the bicameral letter Democratic leaders sent rejecting Attorney General Barr's effort to provide the remainder of the report to only a few members of Congress and only in a classified setting. We insist on the public's right to know so that the American people can learn the truth and Congress can make our decision on how to proceed. So here's what happened today. Bill Barr said he would show the unredacted report in a secure setting, in a closed setting, to a handful of, Congress members. They rejected that offer. They want all of Congress to see it.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Other Democrats have been saying it's not worth the political cost, it's not worth the civic cost, or it's arguably just too soon. What made you decide to take this step today?
Well, I read the report. Yeah. I was on an airplane yesterday and started reading it, read it way into the night last night, and I got to the end and realized this is about a point of principle. The report is absolutely clear that a foreign government attacked our electoral system to help Donald Trump. He welcomed that help. And then when it was investigated by our own federal authorities, Donald Trump took multiple steps to try to obstruct justice. You know, this is one of those moments when I get it, that there are people who think politically, no, it's going to be too hard to do this. This isn't about politics.
No.
This isn't even specifically about Donald Trump himself. It is about what a president of the United States should be able to do and what the role of Congress is in saying, no, a president does not get to come in and stop an investigation about a foreign power that attacked this country or an investigation about his own wrongdoing. Equal justice under law. No one is above the law, and that includes the President of the United States. It is the constitutional responsibility of Congress to follow through on that.
Okay, so that's one school of thought. I happen to like that school. I would attend that school. I would apply to that school. I would study at that school. Because that school says that we are a nation of laws. And that this isn't about any man. This isn't about Donald Trump. And this is not about Junior. And this is not about Carter Page. And this is not about George Patton. This is about our country's Constitution. This is about what is the proper role of Congress? What is oversight to you if it's not to get the testimony that Mueller couldn't get? What is holding somebody accountable under our laws mean if the Constitution clearly tells you that the only place to hold a president, never mind who he is, but the only place to hold any president to account for a violation of the law, which Mueller clearly reaches. He reaches the beyond a reasonable doubt standard in obstruction, okay? Couldn't reach the beyond a reasonable doubt standard in the conspiracy because people destroyed evidence. Some of the people he needed to speak to were overseas. They weren't here. They were in Russia, like Konstantin Kilimnik, et cetera, et cetera. Other people used encrypted apps, and they couldn't retrieve the documents, like Paul Manafort and others. And some of them would invoke their Fifth Amendment privileges. So you have destruction of evidence. You have people, staying outside the jurisdiction of the United States whose testimony could not be gotten. You have people using encrypted apps that don't retain the documentation. And you have people lying to Congress and lying to the special counsel so that his investigation was impeded. Now, isn't it time that Congress actually called the president to testify? Isn't it time that Congress actually calls Mueller to testify? What time is it if it's not that time? So that there is one school of thought. And then there's the other school of thought. The equivocal school of thought. Where maybe we should just, I don't know, wait until he leaves office. And then we can prosecute him as a citizen because everyone who's read this agrees that the president is prosecutable but for the fact that he's president. So we have a man who, if he was in any other position, your position, my position, the position of your parents or your children, he would be prosecuted. But for being president, you cannot prosecute him.
The Mueller view, it seems to me, if you look at the document, is that they absolutely believe there is a potential viable prosecution once Donald Trump leaves office. I mean, he says in great particularity that although you cannot prosecute a sitting president under the OLC interpretation, we are nonetheless preserving evidence while memories are fresh and documents are available, because a president, once he leaves office, can be charged with crimes committed while in office. I don't think it could be more clear. Whether or not a prosecutor will seek to do it and whether or not there will be viable defenses, I don't know. But the position of the Mueller team, to me, is clearly the case. They think there's future legal jeopardy.
So the statement that Donald Trump will die in jail, which is something I've said before, still holds true to this day. And that is who the president of the United States is. We have a commander-in-chief whose orders are blatantly ignored by his cabinet members because they believe what they've been ordered to do are illegal orders and that they should not be followed. So this goes way back to when Harry Reid was, the minority leader in the Senate, and Donald Trump was going to be the Republican nominee, and he was going to get intelligence briefings. And this so worried the Senate that Harry Reid said,
give him fake briefings.
What does that even mean?
It means they'll tell him stuff. He won't know the difference.
And that is in whose hands the country's safety and security is right now. In a commander-in-chief who lies so often, has such bad motives, who is acting to protect himself, who is willing to deal with efficient intelligence agencies belonging to foreign adversaries in order to advance himself, to change the foreign policy of the United States for some damn reason that does not represent American needs, values, American places in the world, but rather represents an authoritarian regimes like Saudi Arabia, like Russia, like a communist country like China, instead of the United States' best interest, because somehow it helps him win things. That is a sick place for this country to be in. And then you look at what happened over the weekend, Easter Sunday in Sri Lanka. That is just a bloody mess. Okay, so now today they're saying they think that first they said it's a local group in Sri Lanka. And just so you know, what happened yesterday was 3 Christian churches and hotels where Americans typically like to stay. Sri Lanka is an island nation just south of India. Okay, that's where it is. And so you had almost 300 people killed, 500 people wounded. 7 suicide bombers attacked 3 churches and 3 hotels. And 10 days before this Easter Sunday bombing happened, the Sri Lankan government got a heads up. They knew that this was going to happen, and they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything to protect their people. That's because whoever got that information, according to their prime minister, did not deliver that information to their prime minister. Now, that is the situation that the United States is in. You get that? That people are so afraid to tell Donald Trump true things that they don't tell him true things, or that if Donald Trump orders something done, they don't do it because they think that what he's ordered is illegal. What he's ordered is to protect himself and not the vast majority of Americans. I mean, this is a sick place to be. So now we're Sri Lanka. And of course, they don't have ISIS in Sri Lanka. But ISIS found 7 suicide bombers in Sri Lanka.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
Mueller had some of the most accomplished criminal appellate lawyers in the country on his team. They would have been in a really good position to calibrate just how long it would take them to appeal the president's refusal to testify pursuant to a subpoena. We know he would have refused. And they could have also assessed the likelihood that they would have won in the Supreme Court. They decided not to pursue it, but I don't think it was because, as some folks have suggested, they wimped out in this fight. I think as they were acquiring evidence along the way on obstruction, at some point they realized that even though they weren't going to make this binary choice that prosecutors make, indict or not indict, that even though they were on a different path, they realized that they had enough evidence to prove obstruction charges against the president. They realized that they did not need to have the president of the United States come in for an interview, and that interview might not have produced results. It could have been this painful excursion with Trump asserting the Fifth Amendment. That's not a good look for a sitting president, but he could have done that. There would have been delay. There would have been controversy. And Mueller, as you read this report, is very confident that he had evidence on at least a couple of these different obstruction counts.
And yet, and this is the core question, Joyce, The core question, now that we've seen already the spin and the echoes and the smoke and the bar of it all, would Mueller have done a better job if he would have at least forced Donald Trump to come into a room and say, I invoke the Fifth on the grounds that my answer may incriminate me? Would that alone in this world have helped land it? Yes or no to both of you before I fit in a break? Joyce.
You know, Mueller made the calculation that it wouldn't, and I'm inclined to trust him. I suspect he would have never gotten Trump into that room. It would have been a lengthy process. It would have been a couple years down the road even before we got to that juncture. The real question in my mind, Ari, is why did Mueller feel so much time pressure?
Yeah.
He moved so quickly, so strategically, almost surgically for a prosecutor. Most cases like this go on for years. Mueller, for some reason, felt time pressure, and I'd love to know the answer to why he felt that.
I would too. And see, these are the great minds, the great legal minds that we have available to us to comment on what we read. And what we read was that Mueller felt time pressure. Mueller felt that he was at a late stage, meaning that there was an end that he had to finish by. Now, who decided that Mueller had an end date? Well, I'll bet you anything it was that lion's sack of disbarred crap, and that has to be the result also of Bill Barr. There is no question in my mind that Bill Barr gave Mueller an end date, and that this entire report was forced out in its current form before Mueller felt that he was really finished. And that's why there are so many unanswered questions in this report.
For starters, there are just things that just weren't mentioned in the report at all that were very surprising, such as, Cambridge Analytica, the NRA's ties potentially to the Russians, and whether there was any kind of Russian money flowing through the NRA. That is something that Mueller was investigating. Mueller was also investigating, Cambridge Analytica's potential ties to WikiLeaks. He interviewed, employees at Cambridge Analytica to that effect. So it's kind of interesting to me that none of those were mentioned. And, also the Alpha Bank Trump Organization server mystery computer activity that was happening during the election was not mentioned at all. So a lot of kind of big questions that were admitted that we knew that Mueller was investigating, and then things in the report that Mueller said that he really wasn't able to get an answer to. Things like, what did Carter Page do when he was in Moscow in July of 2016 while he was working for the campaign? They really were not able to get a clear answer on why he was over there, who he spoke to. There's just a lot of things they couldn't get to because of lack of access to relevant communication. So, for example, other things like Paul Manafort and why he gave the internal polling data to the Russians and Deripaska and Kalimnik and what actually happened to it. The peace plan. I mean, there are a ton.
There is a ton that Mueller didn't get to, and it just seems like the end of the Mueller investigation was a forced ending, because obviously Mueller was interested in the NRA. He was interviewing people about the NRA's money. He indicted Maria Butina, for God's sake. So he obviously was investigating Russian money in the NRA. He obviously was investigating Carter Page. And who did Carter Page meet with in Russia when he was working on the Trump campaign? And in the Mueller report, he doesn't have an answer that satisfies him. We also know that Paul Manafort gave polling data to somebody that the FBI agreed was a intelligence officer for the Russians. That's Konstantin Kalimnik. And we also know that the polling data was specific polling data to do with Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, and Michigan. And there's no conclusion about what that was for. And there's no talk of Cambridge Analytica's efforts at all. You don't see that in this report. There's so much missing, and it just seems like this was a premature conclusion to an investigation at the behest of Bill Barr. It's just a suspicion I have, and we won't know unless Mueller is called to testify and somebody asks him whether or not he was completely done or whether or not he was told he was done. Michael in Boca.
Randy.
Yes.
Heavens to Murgatroyd, for the love of Pete Jeezel. Would somebody please stopping the conversation after a Republican says, oh, you better not impeach Trump. Remember what happened to Bill Clinton. Let's stop saying remember and let's remember. Shall we? So what happened in 2000, Randy? Who won that election?
Yeah.
Okay. What happened in 2002? What happened in 2004? We didn't get the House back until 2006. They were rewarded for the impeachment, Randy. They were rewarded for it. You know why? Because the ultimate statement they were saying, though I was all against it, but I'm saying the ultimate narrative was not in our House, Bill. And that narrative said something to America.
But this has nothing to do with Bill Clinton. The reason why Bill...
I know that.
Okay,
I
so
agree. I'm just talking principally.
Let's just tell people who don't remember. The underlying crime in the Clinton impeachment was a consensual affair. Therefore, there was no crime. What Bill Clinton was impeached for was obstruction of justice because Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky both agreed that they would lie about their consensual affair.
One count, Randy.
But they called
one count.
But the Republicans called that suborning perjury.
Yep.
Okay? And these people plowed so far off the rails to impeach Bill Clinton. They cobbled together enough votes to impeach him. A trial ensued in the Senate. And while that trial was going on, the American public rejected the Republican notion that Bill Clinton should be removed. And his approval rating went up to like 68%.
Correct.
Okay, so this is what Democrats and Republicans keep in vote. Remember Bill Clinton? We're talking about something completely different. We're talking about a foreign government providing stolen documents hacked by a Russian troll farm loyal to Vladimir Putin, presented to Donald Trump, accepted by Donald Trump, relied on by Donald Trump, with WikiLeaks as an intermediary used to disseminate that stolen information.
All day.
How does that have anything to do with Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky agreeing that they wouldn't say that they were really having an affair?
You can't compare the acts, but the principle. If they want to rock and roll about this principle, then let's look at it. President A was impeached. He was not removed. The party that impeached him won 3 times in a row. So if we want to say leave Trump alone because of what happened to the Republican Party, I'm willing to go with it. If history's on our side, Randy, is what I'm saying. If they want to use that,
I see.
We don't even have to get into what each guy is being. I'm saying they're saying without even mentioning the differences. Don't do it. Remember what happened to the Republican Party, and I'm saying I'll go with that one.
Yeah, you're saying people like impeachment.
All day.
All day.
And there's never been a successful removal, but the impeachment. No. Randy, here's why I want the impeachment.
Well, Richard Nixon's Article 1 was obstruction of justice, and he resigned because back then the Republicans had some sort of integrity.
Yes.
So.
And Randy, we have to tell the world that this is not normal, that we don't just give this another bite at the election apple. Plus, we can't trust their motherfucking elections anyway.
Well, here's what I want people to understand. This has absolutely nothing to do with politics. This has to do with the rule of law. And what you have now is 1,892,643 Democratic candidates who will all be in a town hall tonight on CNN starting at 7 o'clock, then 8 o'clock, then 9 o'clock, then 10 o'clock, then 11 o'clock, right? And they're all going to be asked about this, and they better have an unequivocal answer. Because right now there is conspicuous silence and equivocation on the part of Buttigieg and Kamala Harris, etc., etc.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
The biggest headline is that the report makes the case the president tried to collude and makes a detailed case of how he tried to obstruct. On collusion, which Mueller's report says the president himself told the campaign he knew about upcoming WikiLeaks releases. He sought updates about them. The campaign planned a communications strategy around them. The campaign was also receptive to Russian offers of assistance, some tied directly to the government. So just let all that sink in.
Yeah.
The president and his team did not commit the hacking crime, but they cheered it on and they amplified its reach. Then Mueller lays out a heck of a lot of evidence that the president tried to obstruct the investigation into Russian interference. Mueller says President Trump tried to influence the investigation and had a clear motive to do so. He lays out evidence that the president tried to curtail it, tried to control it, and ultimately tried to end it. Then there's this head-turning line, quote, "The president's efforts to influence the investigation were mostly unsuccessful, but that is largely because the persons who surrounded the president declined to carry out orders or accede to his requests."
Give him fake briefings.
What does that even mean?
It means they'll tell him stuff. He won't know the difference.
Exactly. And that is who we have as a president of the United States. Somebody who gives orders that his own cabinet cannot, will not, and do not follow. That is incredible lack of leadership. That is incredible lack of trust. That is a country in chaos. And that is us. That is where we're at. Now, the House Judiciary Committee, Gerald Nadler, just subpoenaed the former counsel, the White House counsel, Don McGahn, which is interesting because, here, May 2nd, we know Bill Barr has to testify. We don't know when Mueller will testify. We don't even know if they've subpoenaed Mueller yet. But we do know that a subpoena went out for the entire unredacted Mueller report, that the Democrats were offered a chance to have some hand-picked leaders of the House and Senate go to a secure location, and only those hand-picked people would be able to view the unredacted version. Nancy Pelosi has decided to reject that offer and instead say that Congress's role is to do the redactions, meaning they should get the entire unredacted report, and then they should decide what the public cannot see because of sources and methods, or and then they should go to the court and tell the court that there is a national interest in seeing the 6E material, the grand jury material, make that case, win that case, and then release the Mueller report in its entirety, minus any intelligence sources and methods that may have been included, which are very few and far between, I have to say. And the reason why they're very few and far between, the intelligence sources and methods of redactions, is because this was not a counterintelligence report. In fact, the next person that I would subpoena would be Christopher Wray, the FBI director. Do you know why? In the Mueller report, clearly, Mueller says he is not doing the counterintelligence portion. That the counterintelligence portion, meaning the question of whether or not Donald Trump is compromised by a foreign government, was never answered in Mueller's report. Mueller only looked at it from a criminal law perspective. And he began on page 1 by saying the president can't be indicted. And he ended on page 448 by saying the president cannot be indicted, and the role to hold the president criminally accountable belongs in Congress. Now, the counterintelligence portion, Mueller says in this report, was left with the FBI, who started it. Remember, James Comey opened up a counterintelligence investigation after the Australians contacted the United States. An Australian ambassador contacted the United States and said that they had heard directly from a drunk George Papadopoulos at a wine-fueled dinner in London that the Russians had thousands of Hillary Clinton's emails and were going to release them to help Donald Trump win. And when the Australians contacted our FBI, James Comey, opened up a counterintelligence investigation. And the life of the counterintelligence investigation hasn't terminated. It's ongoing. And so most of the intelligence information is in an FBI report that we've not seen. And that's why there are so few redactions on sources and methods, except to do with Paul Manafort. There are tons of redactions for sources and methods in the Paul Manafort portion of this report. However, Mueller did not answer the question of whether or not our president is compromised. He left that to Chris Wray. So Chris Wray also needs to be subpoenaed, and he needs to, meet in private, and he needs to brief Congress, and he also needs to testify in public so that we can know what the status of the report is. Where is he on it? He can't disclose the sources and methods. Obviously, we'll never know what they're doing. But we should know the result. And the result should be a yes or no. Is the president of the United States compromised? And we don't know the answer to that. So today, Nadler subpoenaed former White House counsel Don McGahn, which tells me that they're going to, pursue the obstruction portion. But we don't know the answer to the is the president compromised portion, because that's not in the Mueller report. And I want everyone to remember that, because it's a significant question. All Mueller looked at was criminal statutes and whether or not he could apply them to the president. And clearly he starts off by saying he can't. And clearly he ends up by saying he can't. And that the proper role for, holding him accountable to criminal violations is Congress. That's just a fact. Mike in Tampa.
Hey, Randy.
Hey, Mike.
Here's one thing I know. I know if the Republicans had as much dirt as we have on Trump on a Democratic president, they wouldn't be holding back and saying, "Oh, we're not going to go through with impeachment because we don't have the votes." They'd go through with it.
Yeah, there's no question in my mind. And the American people do like strong and wrong, and that's all the Republicans have. But what's wrong with strong and correct? What's wrong with might makes right? I don't understand why we're equivocating on whether to hold the president accountable. We are a nation of law. The president clearly showed that he violated the law with intent to violate the law. That's mens rea. Whenever, Mueller writes in here about mens rea. Mens rea is consciousness of guilt. So that was how he was able to prove intent without a sit down. The president didn't sit down because the president was going to invoke his Fifth Amendment privilege. That's number one. Number two, the president didn't sit down because his lawyers knew he would perjure himself. And number three, the president didn't sit down because Mueller ran out of time. So who limited Mueller's time? These are the questions.
Well, one thing, this is just speculation, but I was thinking maybe Whitaker cut the funding.
No,
and then
he didn't.
No?
No, because we would know that.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Well, really, this isn't really about politics.
It isn't.
I think it's about standards, because I can't go to work and behave however the hell I want and keep my job, and neither should Trump.
It's beyond that. That man has the national security of the United States in his care. And obviously the people around him will not execute on his orders because they don't believe, A, that that's true, and B, they think that the stuff he asks them to do is illegal and they will not follow through on illegal orders. And that is just a sad, sad state of affairs when you consider that you just saw 800 people injured or dead from a bombing, and it's because the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka wasn't given the intelligence that they had because they didn't trust him. I mean, this is a sad situation to be in. It's a very strange and awful place to be in. And like I said, tonight, CNN's going to have town halls beginning at 7 o'clock. Klobuchar, Warren, Sanders, Kamala Harris, and Buttigieg. They better have an answer.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randy, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
If you could see into the future, and that's how it would go, the House says yes, Senate says no, would you still think that it was the right thing to do for the country and that it was a worthy use of resources and time?
Yes, I would.
Me too.
I think that each person has to stand up and be counted in a democracy. I think that's why we're elected to the House and to the Senate. And there are times when it's beyond politics, when it is a point of principle, to stand up and say, no president can do this. Because it matters not just for this president, it matters for the next president and the president after that and the president after that. You know, I get it. In dictatorships, the government coalesces around the one person in the middle and does everything to protect that one person. But that's not where we live. We live in a democracy, and it is controlled by a constitution. And the way we make that democracy work is with checks and balances. And a president who says, I don't have to follow the law, and nobody can touch me on criminal acts, that's not right. The Constitution says that the House and the Senate can do this. And look, this is not something I want to do. That's not the point. It's a point of principle, and every member of the House and every member of the Senate should be called on to vote. Do you believe that that constitutes an impeachable offense? I do believe that the evidence is just overwhelming that Donald Trump has committed these offenses, and that means we should open proceedings in the House, and then the House can take a vote.
Yep. I mean, it's a very simple matter that the House needs to obviously call some people who testified in this report. So today they subpoenaed Don McGahn, the White House counsel. Why? Because Don McGahn is the person that spent over 30 hours telling Mueller about this lawless president and his obstruction of justice and his issuing of illegal orders to go ahead and fire Jeff Sessions, to go ahead and fire James Comey, to go ahead, and what's really sick is when the president couldn't find anybody in his cabinet to execute on his illegal orders to obstruct justice in a legitimate inquiry into whether or not the president was compromised by a foreign government, and also then a criminal investigation, which came after he fired Comey, into obstruction of justice, that the president tried to end it. The president tried to propagandize the American people. The president was lying. The president was, ordering people in his cabinet to fire the special counsel over and over after he ordered people to fire Comey, and they wouldn't do it either. Okay, except that somebody, Rod Rosenstein, who's, Rod Rosenstein, he's such a mealy mouth. He's such a lily-livered little lawyer. He's one of those lawyers, and I know so many of them. I know all kinds of lawyers. I mean, and lawyers, there's all different kinds of lawyers, as you know. But this particular type of lawyer is the most common type of lawyer. This is the lily-livered, lying lawyer. This is the one that says, any way the wind blows doesn't really matter to me. I can make an argument on any side of any issue. I have no principles. I have no guiding light. I can twist the law. I can bend the law. I can make it bend towards justice, or I can make it bend towards you. That's Rod. And so Rosenstein gave the president the cover he wanted to say that the FBI was in terrible hands because of the way James Comey handled the Hillary Clinton email investigation, and that's why he was going to be fired. Then the idiot that Trump is went on TV and backstabbed Rod and said, no, I was going to fire him anyway, regardless of recommendation, because of this Russia thing. And Rod stayed there. That's what I mean. He's one of those lily-livered, any way the wind blows, doesn't really matter to me kind of lawyers. He stayed there. And he was standing behind Bill Barr, who also lied, and said, the president, had every right to be angry and do the things that he did to obstruct justice. No, anger is a symptom of obstruction. It is not a reason to do obstruction. It's a mens rea. It's the sign of a guilty mind. So we're in this terrible predicament. But even above that, I want you to remember this little portion of the Mueller report. When Donald Trump couldn't find anybody in his cabinet to fire Bob Mueller, He called a private citizen. He called Corey Lewandowski. And he asked Corey Lewandowski, a private citizen, to fire the special counsel of the United States of America. And Corey Lewandowski wouldn't do it. But the president was asking a private citizen to fire Bob Mueller. Now, this tells me that the president is a coward. It also tells me that the president likes to set other people up to do the hit and then pretend that he had nothing to do with it. Did I give the order? Did I give the order? Don't ask if I gave the order, because this is the business we have chosen. I didn't ask who gave the order. And in this Mueller report, I swear to God, it's like Donald Trump is screaming at Don McGahn to fire Bob Mueller, and then says, I never used the word fire. I never used the word fire. I just said that he's so conflicted he has to go. I never used the word fire. This is a sick man. And the rule of law in this country is what's on the plate. The rule of law in this country is about to evaporate if we don't hold this man accountable for these things. And that is just the fact of it. And if you think that this president is ridiculous, and you think that this president doesn't know what he's doing, and you think that this president, trying 40 times the courts have disagreed with a decision Donald Trump has made. He wants a Muslim ban. He wants asylum ended by proclamation. He doesn't like our laws. He just won't follow the laws. He'll just sign an executive order saying, and the courts keep overruling him and overturning him. The courts keep telling you he has no idea what he's doing. You can't do this. You can't do this. And if you think that he's out of control, if you think the idea that Congress no longer declares the wars because of the unitary executive swill that was forced down our throats by guys like Bush and Cheney and Addington, and that the United States we're part of the Geneva Conventions. We wrote the Geneva Conventions. And you have these crazy lawyers like John Yoo, who writes a stupid memo and says you can go ahead and torture people. And then when people show up tortured on film, 7 low-ranking reservists are the ones who go pay the price in Leavenworth. This is just like Donald Trump telling Michael Cohen to pay off a mistress, and only Michael Cohen is going to jail. So if you think the president is insulated from the law now, if you think the president can order torture and never be held responsible now, if you think the president can commit troops now without Congress having a vote authorizing the use of military force, if you think the president is above the law now, if Trump gets away, and I don't mean Trump, I mean if the presidency is given a pass on obstruction of justice, if the presidency is giving a pass on giving illegal orders to people who will not obey them, then the law will say the orders are lawful.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
So let me give you a clear example of what I'm talking about. If the president cannot be held accountable because he's the president by the laws of the United States, meaning Congress is, according to this OLC opinion, it's not even a law, but it's an opinion, and Bob Mueller worked for the Justice Department. So therefore, Bob Mueller felt that he was bound by the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel's opinion that a sitting president can't be indicted. All right, let's just accept that for a brief moment. If Congress then fails to hold the president accountable, which is where Bob Mueller says a president must go to be held accountable under our laws, and Congress fails to do it, then that means that anything that the president decides to do is lawful, because Congress will not hold the president accountable to the law. So let's say, you know how everybody on the right's always freaked out about martial law? And everybody, remember Jade Helm, remember that? Everybody's always freaked out that the militias will be deputized by the president of the United States illegally, and that these felons or that these crazy people with absolutely no law enforcement training will take the law into their own hands, and they will start shooting people or arresting people or kidnapping people, as was done in New Mexico. That's what we were talking about on the Randi Rhodes After Hours podcast on Friday night, is that you have these crazy vigilantes in Flora Vista, New Mexico, who were kidnapping immigrants because they felt that they had to take the law into their own hands because that's what Donald Trump would want. And they are a militia group. Here's a little video of what they were doing. They were misrepresenting themselves to immigrants at the border in New Mexico, telling them that they were Border Patrol. Okay?
U.S. Border Patrol, what are you guys doing?
The man speaking in the video is not a Border Patrol agent, but he appears to be acting like one. Here, he gives commands to the migrant group, some of them children, which he has just intercepted.
What? Yep. There you go.
The clips were posted to the Facebook page of Jim Benvey, a member of the United Constitutional Patriots, a militia group based along the New Mexico border.
Oh, we don't work well with Border Patrol, by the way, just so you guys know that. That's the media.
They describe themselves as concerned citizens, helping to keep America safe, plugging the holes, they say, for the U.S. Border Patrol.
That Border Patrol is tied up, so if we weren't here right now, they could be bringing in busloads, dropping them over here, and running up the hill.
The group's actions have drawn swift condemnation from the American Civil Liberties Union and others who have equated the group's actions to kidnapping.
This is exactly why we don't let private citizens enforce the laws of our country. This is an act of vigilantism, and we need federal, local, and state authorities stepping in as quickly as possible.
They've asked federal, state, and local law enforcement to investigate. In a statement to CNN, a spokesman for the New Mexico governor's office said this about the militia group. They have absolutely not been authorized by our office or any other. We are actively working with the Attorney General's office, state police, and local police to determine what has gone on and what can and will be done. That migrant families might be menaced or threatened in any way, shape, or form is completely unacceptable. CNN has been unable to independently verify when and where the clips were shot. We made several attempts to reach the United Constitutional Patriots and Jim Benvey. They did not reply.
Okay, so they kidnapped 300 people in New Mexico, and the leader of the New Mexico militia that has been doing this, okay, has now told the FBI, a man named Larry Mitchell Hopkins, he's 69 years old. He was arrested on Saturday on suspicion of being a felon in possession of a firearm and ammunition, and made an initial appearance at the federal court in Las Cruces, New Mexico today. He's in custody pending a preliminary hearing. Well, he goes by an alias, Johnny Horton Jr., and he's been described as the commander of the United Constitutional Patriots, which is a militia group. Now, let's just say that the president decides that he likes the militia group's activities, and he deputizes them, and he says, you are free to kidnap whoever you want in this country. That's unlawful, but if Congress won't hold the president accountable for such activities, then who will? Because Bob Mueller has said that the Justice Department believes that the president cannot be held accountable while he's in office by a court of law. Now, in an affidavit that was filed on Saturday in support of the arrest of this man, Hopkins, an FBI agent swore out that he received reports of, and this is in quotes, alleged militia extremist activity in Flora Vista, New Mexico, based out of Hopkins' home, with the group being supported by about 20 members who were armed with AK-47 rifles and other firearms. Hopkins also allegedly made the statement that the United Constitutional Patriots were training to assassinate George Soros, Hillary Clinton, and Barack Obama. What if the president deputizes them and says, that's fine with me? Do you see where we're going? Do you understand that this conclusion that a president can't be held accountable while he's the president is A, the wrong rule to be following, and B, that if it's true that Congress is the only place that can hold the president accountable, then Congress must stop this lawless man now? And that's why, like I said, tonight there will be all these presidential town halls. They will not be on the same stage together. That would be a debate. These are town halls where each of the candidates will get a chance to answer questions from the audience. It'll be on CNN, and it starts at 7 Eastern time. The first person, it will be Amy Klobuchar, kind of a moderate there, and Amy Klobuchar will answer questions, followed by at 8 o'clock, Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren is the only person who has come out fully and squarely in the camp of this is not about a person. It's about the Constitution. It's about the presidency, which has been destroyed by the man who's occupying that. Now, he will not be there forever because he's old, because he may not leave on his own accord, but he's old. So he will not be there forever. That's just a fact. But she is the only candidate so far who has come out squarely in the corner of the constitutional authority that Congress must use. And that is to have an impeachment hearing to find out if the president needs to be indicted, which is an impeachment. 9 o'clock is Bernie Sanders. 10 o'clock is Kamala Harris. Now, Kamala Harris, as you know, is a prosecutor. She will have a clear idea of what the law requires. I'm interested to hear what she thinks the Constitution requires, because her interpretation of the Constitution is worth hearing and worth knowing. And then at 11 o'clock, Pete Buttigieg will be having his town hall. So 7 o'clock Klobuchar, 8 o'clock Warren, 9 o'clock Bernie. I bet you anything Bernie steers away from it and wants to talk about, health care and other things. Now, here's my thing. We can do both. I know how to walk and talk. I think Congress knows how to walk and talk. There are 10 bills that the House has that we would all want to see passed, and the Senate will never take them up. So for everybody who says, oh, why can't we get anything done? The answer is Mitch McConnell. You got that?
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
Did you want President Trump to win the election, and did you direct any of your officials to help him do that?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Because he talked about bringing the U.S.-Russia relationship back to normal.
What else do you need? It's just unbelievable. It's just so unbelievable. Robert in Phoenix.
Hi, Randy. I couldn't agree with you more about the Constitution, this DOJ policy. I think it's a bunch of crap. It reminds me of Trump's sister, the policy they have with the federal judges there, where if you resign, you're not going to get investigated.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the same crap. They're circumventing the Constitution. That'd be like me owning a car dealership and sending out a bunch of car thieves, and then if they're going to get busted, say, okay, if you resign, we're not going to prosecute you.
Yeah, it is.
It's the same thing. I mean, they can't get away with this. And they need to impeach this guy. I mean, they needed to impeach him. But this is just ridiculous.
Well, I think that what the Democrats are doing is they are saying, let's have hearings so that the American people can hear the testimony from Adam McGahn and find out what was going on and how he dirtied up the presidency and how he's, violative of the law and how he doesn't give a rat's ass about anybody but himself and how he gives illegal orders and what a mess he's turned, the presidency into and how we can't leave, right? And then also bring in Mueller and ask Mueller questions like, did Bill Barr pressure you to end this investigation? Were you ready to end it?
I think he did.
I do too, because there's too many unanswered.
It just happened too quick.
It's not just the quickness of it, which is interesting, but it's the fact
that... The grand jury extension also?
Yes, it's the fact that he had just asked to have the grand jury extended, and he was investigating the NRA's money, and he was looking at Cambridge Analytica, because you know that Christopher Wiley, remember the kid with pink hair?
Yeah, right.
He went and testified to the grand jury. So you know that they were going down that road and that there's no discussion of it in the Mueller report. There's nothing on Cambridge. There's nothing on the NRA's money. There's nothing in the polling data except to say that Mueller knows that the polling data was very specific to Wisconsin, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, right? And so there's too many loose ends. For
way too many, and they have them to snap off just like that, real quick, like we're done.
Yeah, and that that Mueller writes.
It's democracy or hypocrisy, one of the two.
No, it's worse than that. It's a conspiracy to keep the president keep the president above the law. I mean, it's sad.
All these. I called my senator over, and she's a Democrat, Kristen Sinema. I gave her hell. I was like, you can't be voting for his nominees and siding with that. We didn't send you there for that.
What'd she say?
I got her message machine, and of course I'm not going to answer the phone. I don't think she's really popular right now.
Well, you know what? They're in recess, so there's no one home. But she's
been too damn quiet anyway.
Well, you know what I would do if I were you? I'd call her local office in Phoenix or wherever her Senate office is.
That's what I did. That's where I called down there.
Okay, good.
I got the answer machine.
Yeah, good.
I'll keep calling, though.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, because I'm not happy with her. I'm like, hey, I'll do everything I can to make sure you don't get elected again because we didn't send you there to do this. It's the same. We wanted to change. You're not a change. So everybody should call their congressman and tell them.
It's so interesting, but people did want change. They really did. And they thought that Donald Trump was, bold and brash and that he could cause change. But it's so sad because that man only cares about that man. He doesn't care about change that matters for working people. He doesn't care about change that matters for, people who are facing, their children being addicted or this or that. He doesn't care about your issues. He cares about himself. And it's a sad
He doesn't
thing.
even live in the same world.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't live in our world. He doesn't care about our world. He plays us. We've been played by him for 2 years now, and it's enough. It's enough. But I know that if Democrats don't do what they're constitutionally tasked with doing, what their job is, if they don't conduct oversight and promote policies that help the American people, like Medicare for all, like relieving 95% of student debt, which Elizabeth Warren. It's so funny because Elizabeth Warren was able to say what she felt about Congress's obligation to hold this president accountable, and also announce a plan for wiping out student loan debt.
Anyone who's got outstanding student loan debt can have up to $50,000 worth of student loan debt canceled out so long as their income is under $100,000. Then it kind of steps in up to there's no help for anybody whose family income is above $250,000. And that's it.
And that's it. And the way that she proposes to pay for it is with a wealth tax on people making over $50 million. That's not the top 1%. That's the top 0.0001%. And she's saying that people that make over $50 million a year in income need to pay an extra 2%. And if we did that, it would be a one-time cost of about $650 million or $650 billion to wipe out 95% of student loan debt and give our kids a chance at a future. Give our kids a chance to get ahead. They're being punished for the crime of getting an education. I mean, it's a ridiculous notion in this day and age. But it's so interesting that you could stand up for the Constitution, stand up for Congress's oversight role, stand up for Congress. If you think that Congress is the only place that a president can be held accountable to the law, she can stand up for that, and she can also propose wiping out 95% of student loan debt in this country, telling you how to pay for it in under 30 seconds. Because when you know what you're for, you know what you're for. And it's not just that I want to do this, it's how I would pay for it. And to be able to do that in just, how long was that clip? That clip is like, seconds. It is literally seconds.
Anyone who's got outstanding student loan debt can have up to $50,000 worth of student loan debt canceled out so long as their income is under $100,000. Then it kind of steps in up to there's no help for anybody whose family income is above $250,000. And that's it.
And that's it. That's 21 seconds to lay out a proposal that not only has she thought through, not only does she realize how many people would benefit, you know what the actual number is? 40 million students, 40 million would have their student loan wiped out. But she could say it in 21 seconds because she's thought through how to pay for it. And the way to pay for it, she believes, is with a 2% wealth tax on people that make over $50 million a year. I mean, we can walk and talk. We can walk and chew gum or whatever, the metaphor is at the same time. But you do not give Congress a pass on their constitutional duty as a co-equal branch of government when clearly the special counsel actually says there is no doubt at all that the president obstructed justice. Steve in Vermont.
Hey, Randy.
Hey.
So I got a quick question. I know we're right at the end, but so the two options, you have Preet Bharara, and he had said that take care of him when he gets out of office. And then the other option was impeach him. So I still remember the Nixon era, and what happened was Nixon got pardoned when Ford came in. Is that, what do we do? Yeah, so that's my question to you. Is if we go Preet Bharara, his method, we run the risk of a pardon, and does that pardon him from everything?
Yeah, if you replace Donald Trump with a different Republican president, then the Republican Party will pressure that Republican president to issue a pardon for Donald Trump to save the party, right? And that's what happened. Right. And also, Reagan and Bush, when that went from Republican to Republican, there was a special counsel, there was an independent counsel, his name was Lawrence Walsh, and he had proven that Ronald Reagan sold tow missiles to the Iranians, laundered the money through Saudi Arabia, and then increased the value of the money by selling drugs, by bringing drugs up from Central America to Compton, right? And, for, HW, it was Bill Barr, actually, who was the Attorney General, recommended that they pardon Caspar Weinberger, who had the evidence to, indict Reagan. Okay? So, yes, if you elected another Republican president after Trump, that Republican president would pardon Trump. However, if Donald Trump is in a state court, let's say in New York State, then a Republican president could not pardon because the federal government can't pardon state crimes. So this is why I'm sure Trump will die in jail.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force. The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.